Can you tell us the story behind the moment when you decided to make a movie? You've written so much.
So I had written an essay about the history of zoot suit culture, cholo culture, lowriding, and I wanted to kind of contextualize it for people because I had grown up around these subcultures. And so I wrote this essay, and the essay went viral. And after it went viral, I thought to myself, well, it'd be kind of cool to make a visual project that sort of tells this history even a little bit more in depth. And so I sort of sat on the idea for about a year because coming up with footage was difficult. Finding footage from the 60s, 70s, 80s, licensing that footage. I happened to come across a vault, basically, an archive in, I think it was San Jose, and it was from an old cable access station that had gone defunct. And while that cable access station was in operation, there was a camera person there named Juan Espinosa, who would take the camera and he would go out and film all of these events in the 70s and 80s and 60s. And he would have his own cable access station show. Well, when the cable access station went defunct, he donated all of the reels to the city. And so when I found all of this footage, it was amazing. It was early black and white footage of lowriding and the Chicano civil rights era, all these just really cool footage that I had never seen and most people had never seen. So I talked to the city. They told me that they couldn't do anything, but if I could find him, then they'll give us the reels. So I hunted Juan down, found him in Oakland, and we were able to acquire the footage. And then we used AI to restore all of the footage. And then from there, we went and I contacted somebody who was a cinematographer for Unsolved Mysteries at Netflix. And I basically pitched him the idea of, hey, letting us use your $50,000 red camera for this project. I think you want to be a part of it. And they cut us a deal. And then I went to a hotel and I worked a deal with the hotel. I said, if we film at your same hotel in every location, we cut us a deal. They did. So we rented the suite at this hotel and we would do 12-hour film shoots for all the interviews. And we would do basically 4 interviews a day. So we do 3-hour interviews. That way, rather than spending a bunch of money and going out to everybody individually, we'd bring everybody into one central location. We would film interviews for 12 hours straight, and then we'd move on to the next day, do the same thing over and over. And then once we had all our interviews, we restored the footage, edited it, and then we had our movie.
And so it sounds like you almost thrive on picking up the phone or emailing people. You're not shy about trying to contact people.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a shy person. I wouldn't say I necessarily love it. I don't love it any more than anybody else. But I think I'm a very stubborn and a driven person. And so, I become hyper obsessed with things, and finishing that project, raising the money to get it done, getting it into theaters, getting it distributed, I think all of that was because I was very stubborn and very, very driven to push it through. And I also wanted to prove that you could do it without an agent, because we took this film from concept all the way to distribution, goes to streaming October 15th, and into the theaters with no agent the entire time. And so you just have to be very creative in how you work those things out. And sometimes that means you have to get out of your comfort zone, and you're gonna have to talk with people whether or not you want to, and you're gonna have to try to persuade them and try to work some type of mutually beneficial relationship to get everybody on board.
So contacting Juan Espinosa was really the first, aside from the piece that you wrote, was the first part of this journey.
Yeah, that was the first part of the journey as far as filmmaking went. We ended up licensing a lot of photos in the film as well, and so I had to approach each of those photographers individually. I didn't go the route of dealing with a large rights holder house like Getty. They're expensive. And so what I did was I approached photographers directly. And in fact, some photographers who even have stuff on Getty. And I just said, hey, Getty's too expensive. This is the project. What can you do? Would you be willing to work with us? And all of them would. I only had one that wouldn't do it. And so we were able to work individual licensing deals with every photographer that we worked with.
And were all the photographers still alive?
Yes, all of them were alive. Now, Juan has passed away actually during the making of the film,
no.
unfortunately. Yeah, so he never got to see the final film. But yeah, all of the photographers were still alive that we licensed photos from.
But his work is now, I don't know when he passed versus when you contacted him, but it's almost serendipitous because now his work is going to live on even more.
It was, yeah, and we've been told that a lot, that it just, right time, right place. And I'm glad that I was able to be the one to restore that footage and put it out there for people to see. Yeah.
When you told people close to you, I'm making a movie, what did they say?
I don't think anybody who's close to me was surprised. So I think most people who know me were like, you'll find a way to do it.
Had you made any short films?
I did make a short film about 25 years ago, something like that. I mean, my minor was film. I loved film growing up. And when I went into college, my minor was film and my main degree was political science. And so I'd always loved both of those things, but I thought that film was something that I probably wasn't going to make my center focus because I could still pursue that without a degree. But I've always loved the editing process, and I edited this film myself. So, this was something I was looking forward to, and I've always felt comfortable with film. I just had not had an opportunity to make a film.
And you'd also, correct me if I'm wrong, please, it worked as like a copywriter and
I did.
editing,
Yeah, when I left Washington D.C., because I was writing opinion columns in Washington D.C. for a while. When I went back to the West Coast, there's not as many media jobs, and so I went into writing, copywriting. In fact, I wrote jingles for a postcard company for a long time, and in fact, I did it for like 7 years.
Oh wow!
And they'll tell you that I drove them crazy. Because I was always working on film projects and other things in the background, but they were wonderful because they let me travel and let me pursue those interests while writing jingles and doing their copywriting and things like that. So yeah.
That's cool. That's its own movie right there. That's pretty interesting. Before you even tried to make a movie, what was your education process like in terms of the actual filmmaking?
So this makes me smile because this is probably one of those things where I'm the same person for better or worse, which is I just have the tendency to jump into things. My education came through making this film. I didn't know anything. I knew how to edit, so I've always been comfortable with editing film, but I didn't know anything about distribution deals. I didn't know anything about cinematography. I didn't know anything about contacting people or licensing footage or licensing music. All of this is a completely different world, and now I know it. But especially going through the delivery process with a distribution company, what you have to do to procure the rights and to document all of the rights and things like that. So I'd probably do things a little bit different going forward for my next project, so I didn't have to go back and make things so hard on me, because with this film, I had to go back and fix a lot of those things. But yeah, I learned it jumping in, and I think that that's how everybody should learn. That's by far the best. I think there's too many people who they're simply afraid to go out and do it because they feel like they don't have enough information, they don't have the education, and it keeps them from going out and doing things. Just go and jump in. I mean, I did that with writing when I was writing columns in Washington, D.C. I did it with making the film. I did it with starting my company. You just jump in and you learn as you go and you do your best. And if you are the type of person who can take in information and apply it quickly, then I think you'll thrive.
How much money did you have to actually make a movie?
So I raised 50 grand to make the movie. So we made this documentary film for 50 grand, and we were able to take it all the way to streaming.
And may I ask, how did you raise the 50 grand?
So we raised the money from multiple sources. So we had a number of producers that were involved. The first source was a guy who I met when I was in Washington, D.C., and he was actually a roommate of mine when I was working an internship out there. And he went on to become a lawyer later on. Fast forward 15, 17 years, I had mentioned that I was starting a company, we were working on a film, and so he came on board to help produce the film. And then I also did a competition where I pitched our business, which produced the film, to a number of investors. So I went through pitching for about a year. and I pitched to different investors and to different companies and VCs. And at the end of that process, I was in the top 10 finalist, and I ended up not getting it. I didn't get any money. So I had a choice, which was to kind of give up or do the whole process again and pitch for another year and try to get through all of these different cuts that they would do, basically, because when you're raising money from a VC and things like that, you're competing against 100 companies sometimes. So I competed against about 100 companies, 150 companies. And so I pitched almost every month, and they kept weaning it down, weaning it down, weaning it down. And so I didn't make the cut the first time. Second time around, obviously my fear was I was gonna waste another year. But I knew I could do it. Like, I just knew if I could just pitch better and keep hammering it home, I could do it. And so I took the risk and I pitched again for another year, and this time we were able to win money. And I was able to take that money, add it to Patrick's money from our first producer, and then link up with another investor, and then we just threw it all into one, and then we're able to launch the company, build the app, make the movie.
Were these pitching events?
Yeah, they were pitching events. So basically how it starts is, you're putting the pitch in writing, and sometimes they're gonna ask for a business plan, and those business plans are gonna be 50 to 100 pages. So then I'm having to put that in. Then they're gonna have you pitch over Zoom. And so we had dozens of investors that'll sit there and listen to you pitch over Zoom. They have a bunch of other businesses also pitching over Zoom. They'll do that for months, and then they'll bring you back, you'll pitch again. Sometimes they'll have you in person, you'll pitch again. Sometimes you're waiting in the waiting room and you see the other people that you're pitching against waiting also to pitch. Then as they get further into the year, they'll have bigger arenas with investors and with people. You go there on stage, you're pitching again. And so all this time they're weeding out businesses that they're not interested in investing in, people they're not interested in investing in. And you just have to be willing to take no's, and you have to be very confident in what it is that you're putting forward. And so for me, I just look at it like, what do I have to lose? They're gonna say no, then that's fine. You just keep going until you're able to get the money that you need. I think for me, I have a very high threshold for this stuff. I think just because of how I grew up. It sounds funny, and we don't have to go into that. It's just that growing up gave me really thick skin. And so I just feel like this type of stuff is just fun. Like, it's fun. I get to make art, but it doesn't break me if somebody says no, or if I don't get funding, or if I can't make a film. Because it's a privilege to even be doing these things to begin with, and I'm happy to be alive. So that's how I look at things. And I think if you have that perspective, if you can reach down and find something to drive you or to give you perspective, it makes the process a lot easier. But if your whole world is just in one basket, all of your eggs are in one basket, then it's gonna break you when you go through all that work and somebody says no, because you're pinning all your dreams on that one person. So I think that's the wrong approach. Just have fun, just go wing it, see what happens. Don't let it break you.
Has anyone ever said, you know what, I envy you in a good way because you don't let things stop you? Or maybe there are people that are not jealous, because that's something that's rare. A lot of people have been handed things, and I think that actually makes them soft at times. Mm-hmm. And so if you have to earn it yourself, I think you've already kind of taken the knocks, and so you're just like, all right, another one. What's the worst they could say? People have already said the worst, so yeah, it's just going to be another one.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer, but I just, this drives some people I know crazy, but because it creates, a certain threshold for things. But I compare everything to being in jail, doing 22 hours a day in jail, being shot at, being stabbed, overdosing, all of these things that made up my teens and 20s. And having somebody say no for me trying to raise money to make a film, that's easy. That's nothing. And so I'll never forget where I came from, like you had mentioned earlier with the quote. I'm always gonna remember the mistakes I made, the types of people I grew up around, and those types of environments. And it just makes everything else easier because you're so thankful to even be alive. I'm grateful to be alive, and I'm happy, and I'm thankful to be in a position where I'm making art. It's an amazing thing. Everything else is just a plus. It's just a benefit, but I don't expect it.